Hey, I'm Sean, and I want to show you something we've built. So OneGraph is a hosted GraphQL endpoint that brings together lots of different APIs, provides a uniform interface into them, and provides connections between them. And it makes building integrations into your app between 10 to 100 times faster, because most applications today rely on getting data into or out of services like Salesforce, Stripe, GitHub, or dozens of others. And we know that 10 to 100 times faster is a really big claim to make. So let's take a look at an example that might show how it's possible. So we're going to build an app that's meant to be used internally that's going to show us some financial information about what's going on at our company recently. We're going to start with just this simple dashboard, and we're going to reach into lots of different data sources and build out a full app. Okay, to get started with our app, let's reach into Stripe and pull out the recent refunds that our company has issued. To do that, we can come into GraphQL and we can type in our query and we get nice autocomplete each step along the way. What I want to do today instead, however, is use the OneGraph API Explorer. And this gives us a nice visual way of navigating the APIs. So that we can simply click into each one. In this case, we'll go into Stripe, and we see all the fields that are available to us at that level. So let's go ahead and pull out the refunds. And now for each of these refunds, I want to pull out the amount. So we'll take this query and run it. And this looks like great data to get started with. So let's copy our query into our application and see how it changes. So we paste the query into our application, we hit save, and boom, we're rendering recent refunds. Next, let's add a little bit of context to our dashboard. For example, at our company, every time we issue a refund in Stripe, we create an associated case over in Salesforce. So I'm actually going to jump between these two different APIs directly from the refund inside of Stripe. I'm going to open up the Salesforce case. And for that Salesforce case, I want to pull out the subject to get started. Now let me test this query real quick and make sure this looks like the right data. That looks great. And let me pull out a little bit more information. So I'll go ahead and pull out the account. So jumping across the API inside of Salesforce directly into the account. And I want to know the annual revenue for this company to get a sense of how big it is. And I want to know the name. And while I'm at it, I'll pull out the account owner. And this will let me ping them in case this turns out to be a big issue. So let me go ahead and run this query. And this looks like great data to add context to our dashboard. So let's copy the query and put it into our app and see how it changes. Once again, we save our query, we re-render, and we see the information displayed in line. Now, this hypothetical application is built in JavaScript, but you can use OneGraph from any programming language, whether on the back end or even on the front end directly in the browser with no server involved. Our application is already able to show lots of rich contextual information about each Stripe refund, including the associated Salesforce account and case. Now, the last step is to jump from the Salesforce account over to the Stripe customer, where we can pull out all the charges for this account. And that'll give us a sense of how big is this account for us. We can also take a look at how much money has been refunded for each of those charges to see if this is an ongoing problem. To do that, I'm simply going to scroll down on the Salesforce account and find the Stripe customer field. I'll expand that and pull out the email for the customer. And I'll go ahead and pull out the charges as well. And now for each of these charges, I'll pull out the amount and the amount refunded. Let's go ahead and test our query. And it looks like it's pulling out the real data. This is great. So we'll copy this one last time into our application and see how it ends up. Alright, we've built an application that shows some really rich context on the refunds that are going on in our company right now. And it does it by pulling information in from lots of different APIs to show a coherent view. Now, if we look at the equivalent code that we would have to write if we didn't have OneGraph, if we were to manually integrate directly with these different APIs and coordinate the API calls across them, it might look something like this. And this is kind of the best case scenario. If you're already deeply familiar with the APIs and you don't have to go and read their documentation, and if you notice, this still doesn't take care of things like concurrent request, authentication, or rate limiting, which is all handled by OneGraph. Alright, so that's OneGraph in a nutshell. There's lots more that we want to do, but it's a pretty radical new service and we would love to get your feedback. So please go to onegraph.com and let us know what you think. Thank you so much.